I first noticed it during a late evening flight, somewhere between nowhere and somewhere. You know how people talk about getting lost in the sky, in that in-between place where everything blurs, but you're just still enough to feel the weight of the clouds pressing in from both sides? That's when it started. It was nothing alarming at first, just the subtle blinking of something I thought was an unusual star. But something about it didn't sit right. It was too bright, too constant, and too calculated. I brushed it off as a trick of the eye, or maybe the result of staring out of the window too long. But deep down, I knew something was off. At first, I told myself it was just my mind playing tricks. But by the third hour of the flight, when we hit clear skies, I realized it wasn't the clouds I was seeing, but something far more deliberate. The star wasn't a star at all. It was a pattern. Every few seconds, the light would flash in a distinct sequence. A blink, a pause, two quick flashes, and then another long pause. It repeated over and over, as if someone or something was trying to get my attention. But why? I pulled out my phone, figuring I'd try to check for something online, any kind of explanation, maybe a weather balloon or some weird phenomenon I hadn't heard of. But as I unlocked the screen, my phone buzzed in my hand. A text message. Look up. No number attached. I stared at it for a long time. Whoever sent it, they knew exactly what I was looking at. But how? And why me? I turned back to the sky, my heart racing now. The pattern had changed. It wasn't just a series of flashes anymore. This time, it was a string of numbers, shifting and blinking in the same rhythmic way the light had been before. At first, they were too quick to make out. But soon, I began to see the pattern. 3 sets of numbers, each separated by a longer pause. The numbers changed quickly, like a code of some sort, and I realized I was staring at something far more sinister than I could have ever imagined. I made a mental note of them, each set becoming clearer in my mind. It was like the numbers had carved themselves into my brain. Eventually, I couldn't ignore it any longer. I grabbed the nearest flight attendant, a young woman who didn't seem particularly alarmed by my frantic state. She smiled at me, as if trying to calm my racing thoughts. "I'm sorry," I said, trying to catch my breath. "Can you tell me what that light in the sky is?" She followed my finger and stared out the window, her expression unreadable for a moment. "It's just a satellite," she replied, though her voice didn't quite convince me. "Nothing to worry about. Just a signal, maybe." But there was something in the way she said it that made me doubt every word. "Are you sure?" I pressed. "It's not like a pattern?" She just gave me a tight-lipped smile and walked away. The doubts started clawing at me. The numbers, the message. My heart began pounding as I realized the more I looked, the more I couldn't escape the feeling that someone was watching me. I thought about the text. What did it mean? Who would text something like that? Look up. It couldn't have been a coincidence. And it wasn't like a random person had guessed what I was seeing. Whoever it was had known. I tried not to let my mind spiral, but it wasn't easy. What were the chances that someone else had noticed the same thing? What were the chances that I wasn't the only one out of the thousands of people on this flight who had received this message? I grabbed a napkin, and using the pen I always carry with me, I wrote down the numbers. 463-219-751. It felt absurd, but I couldn't shake the feeling that these numbers meant something, that they were leading me somewhere. I kept staring at them. Could they be coordinates? But the world didn't work like that, did it? People don't just send cryptic messages in the middle of nowhere and expect you to follow them. But the text, look up, it wasn't something you say unless you expect someone to follow through. The night dragged on, and despite my best efforts to ignore the nagging feeling, I found myself doing something I never thought I'd do, searching for those numbers online. I wish I hadn't. The first search result made my stomach churn. A website. Encrypted patterns in the sky. I clicked. The page was minimal, with only a black background and white text that scrolled. It was filled with endless lines of numbers, almost identical to the pattern I had seen. But it was the last line on the page that made me freeze. The numbers will appear in the sky for a reason, and you will be chosen. I shook my head. No, this couldn't be real. I tried to shut down my phone, but it was as if something had taken control. The screen wouldn't go black. A second text message appeared. You are on the right path. Follow the numbers. I shoved the phone back into my pocket, trying to steady my breath. My thoughts were racing now. I didn't know who was messing with me, but they were getting too close. Whoever it was, they had been following me long before I realized. The thing is, No one else on the plane seemed to notice. No one else was panicking. No one else was looking up. It was just me and the numbers. But now, as I sit here on this flight, the pattern in the sky grows clearer. The sequence more intense. Each number, it's getting closer to something. I don't know where it's leading, or how it knows about me, but I can't stop myself from following. The flight dragged on for hours, but I couldn't bring myself to look away from the sky. Each time I tried to focus on something else, my eyes kept drifting back to the window. The numbers were still there, flickering in their rhythm. 3 sets, flashing and rearranging. But now, they felt heavier, more deliberate. It was as though they were pulling me in, not allowing me to escape. I tried to force myself to think logically. It was a trick, right? Some prank, maybe? But the website I'd found, the one that had sent chills down my spine, wasn't just any random conspiracy site. It felt intentional, like someone had set this up, not just for me, but for whoever was willing to look. The message, "You are on the right path. Follow the numbers," rang in my mind like a constant drumbeat. Who were these people? What did they want from me? I glanced around the cabin. No one seemed to notice anything unusual. The passengers were either sleeping or watching movies, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of their screens. I felt alone, as if I were the only one who had been awakened to the strange reality that had begun to unfold. I pulled out my phone again, the urge to dig deeper overpowering my better judgment. I checked the time. Only 2 hours had passed since I'd first noticed the lights. My palms were clammy as I searched for anything more on the strange website, but it was as if the answers were being deliberately hidden. Every attempt I made to access more information led to dead ends or encrypted pages that only added more layers to the mystery. Then, I received another text. "You must act before it's too late. The sky will change. Time is running out." I stared at the message, feeling a sinking feeling in my chest. Time is running out. What did that even mean? The sky had already changed, hadn't it? I couldn't help but glance back at the blinking numbers. They were still there, like they had been since the start of the flight, but now the flashing seemed faster, more urgent. I clicked on the message again, but this time, something new appeared. A map. It was a small, blurry image, but I could make out a few things. Coordinates. A city. A location not far from where I was. The map was crude, sketched in a hurry, but there was no mistaking it. Someone was trying to show me something. The coordinates matched those numbers I had written down earlier. 463-219-751. I felt a cold sweat begin to form on the back of my neck. This wasn't some random thing. Someone had gone through the trouble to lead me here. But why me? Why now? The next message arrived. "You're close, but you're not alone. Others are looking for you." I read the words over and over, trying to make sense of them. Others are looking for you. What did that mean? Was I being tracked? Was this some kind of twisted game? I had to get to the bottom of this. I had to understand what was happening. I stood up abruptly, ignoring the startled looks from the passengers around me. My heart was pounding in my chest. The numbers, the messages, it was all connected, and I had to find out how. I made my way toward the front of the plane, hoping to speak with the flight attendants again. But as I reached the aisle, something strange happened. A voice. It came from behind me, low and hushed, barely audible over the hum of the plane's engines. But I heard it, clear as day. "Follow the pattern. You have no choice." I froze. I turned around quickly, scanning the aisle. No one was there. I checked behind me, toward the back of the plane. It was empty. The flight attendants were at the front. No one had said anything. I must have imagined it. But I couldn't shake the chill creeping up my spine. It was real. I heard it. I made my way back to my seat, trying to steady my breathing. I needed to focus. I needed to piece this together. I pulled out my phone once again, and for the first time since the messages began, I felt a sense of resolve. I couldn't run from this. Whatever this was, I had to see it through. I checked the map again. The coordinates. They were pointing to a small, obscure town in the middle of nowhere. The location wasn't far from where I was. A few hundred miles, maybe. But the distance didn't matter as much as the fact that it existed on no modern map. The more I stared at it, the more my mind raced. This town, it wasn't marked on any map. Not the one I had checked earlier, nor any of the ones I looked up after the flight took off. It was like it was deliberately erased from every source I had. I didn't have much time left. I knew that much. But what was waiting for me when I arrived? The messages, the numbers, the strange voice, it was all connected. And yet, there was so much I didn't understand. Was it all just a coincidence, or was I being pulled into something far bigger than myself? My phone buzzed once again, but this time it was different. A notification, a new app, appearing out of nowhere. I opened it. It was just one word: run. Before I could process the message, I looked up, and for the first time in hours, I realized the pattern in the sky had shifted again. This time, it wasn't just numbers. It was a symbol I recognized, though I couldn't quite place where from. It was a triangle, divided into 3 parts. The numbers were still there, embedded within the triangle. But the pattern was unmistakable now. It wasn't random. It was a blueprint. My heart stopped. I knew the shape. I had seen it before. It was the same symbol from the map, from the hidden location. And now, it was flashing at me from the sky. I had no choice but to follow. The realization hit me like a cold wave. This wasn't just a coincidence. The symbol in the sky, the map, the numbers, everything was connected. It wasn't just a riddle. It was a map to something, and I was being guided, whether I wanted it or not. The flight had only a few hours left, and every second was drawing me closer to the unknown. I had no way of predicting what I would find when I landed, but one thing was certain: I couldn't back out now. I turned the phone over in my hands. The last message, just one word, run, had startled me, but I knew it wasn't meant for me to leave. I was already too deep into this. There was no turning back. I checked the app again, but this time it was different. There was no symbol, no hidden code. Instead, there was a countdown. 48:00. It was counting down from 48 hours. My breath hitched. It was an unsettling reminder of just how little time I had left. But what was going to happen when the timer hit 0? Would I be able to stop whatever was coming? Or was this simply my fate playing out before me? The plane began its descent, and as we began to approach the airport, the lights in the cabin flickered once again. A subtle, strange tremor passed through the walls, and the air felt heavier. No one else seemed to notice. They were all lost in their own little worlds, glued to their screens or flipping through magazines. But I was acutely aware of the silence in the air, the calm before the storm. As the plane landed, I grabbed my bag, trying to steady my shaking hands. I glanced out the window one last time, and there it was, the same symbol, shining bright above the city below. The triangle, with the numbers embedded within it. It was no longer just in the sky. It was now all around me. The moment the door of the plane opened, a gust of wind hit me, and I took a deep breath. The air was crisp, almost like the beginning of winter, though it wasn't quite cold enough for that. The terminal was quiet as I stepped out, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of everything that had happened so far, but the answers were still elusive. I had to go to the place marked on the map. I didn't know why, but it felt like the only thing left to do. I caught a cab outside the terminal and gave the driver the address. It wasn't far, but the roads felt unfamiliar, winding in odd directions, as though the city itself was shifting around me. The lights seemed dimmer as we drove through the streets, and the further we went, the more isolated the area became. It was as if the city had become a distant memory, fading into the shadows. "Are you sure about this?" the driver asked, glancing at me through the rearview mirror. "This place is not well known. You might not want to go there." I ignored the warning, my mind fixed on the path ahead. The numbers, the map, the countdown, they had all led to this moment. This place. The driver dropped me off in front of an old, worn building. It looked like something out of another time. Dimly lit, the windows obscured by grime, the entrance hidden behind overgrown vines. My heart skipped a beat as I stepped out of the cab. There was something eerie about this place. It wasn't just the architecture, it was the silence. The air felt wrong here, heavy with anticipation, as though something was about to happen. I didn't even bother to ask if anyone lived here. I already knew. The map had shown me everything I needed to see. I walked toward the entrance, my footsteps echoing against the pavement. As I got closer, the door creaked open, as if inviting me inside. I didn't hesitate. I stepped over the threshold, and the door slammed shut behind me. The air inside was stale, but it was the quiet that unsettled me the most. It was as if the building had been waiting for me, holding its breath. The floors creaked under my weight as I moved forward, the only sound in the silence. My phone buzzed once more, pulling my attention back to it. The countdown had gone down to 43:16. I followed the hall, and as I turned the corner, I saw a faint glow coming from a room at the end. It wasn't a light I could place, too soft, too unnatural. As I drew closer, the glow intensified. I stepped into the room. It was empty. At first, I couldn't understand what was happening. The glow seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, a faint pulse of light that matched the rhythm of my heartbeat. I stepped forward, my hand outstretched, but before I could touch the surface, something strange happened. The air in the room shifted. The glow grew brighter, then dimmed, before finally vanishing altogether. The walls flickered, revealing something hidden beneath the surface: numbers. They appeared and faded, like a code, something I couldn't quite grasp. But in the midst of this chaotic dance of light and shadow, something clicked. The pattern, the numbers, the map. This wasn't a place. This was a trap. Before I could react, a voice rang out from the shadows, cold and distant. "You shouldn't have come here." I froze, every muscle in my body locking in place. The voice was familiar, but I couldn't place it. It wasn't the voice from the plane, but it was close. It felt like the same tone, calm, detached. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper, my throat dry. A figure stepped forward, shrouded in darkness. For a moment, I couldn't make out their face. But as they moved closer, the light flickered again, revealing a twisted smile. "I told you," the figure said. "The numbers never lie." And with that, everything went dark.